Well, Eric and Dave, this is absolutely wonderful. I'm delighted to have the two of you on my first GuavaVet Find Remarkable video blog or vlog. I think that's what we call it these days, is a vlog. So look, I know you. I don't know if everybody who's going to watch this knows you. So why don't you introduce yourselves? I think we'll start with Dave.
Okay, thank you, Aubrey. I'm Dave. I am the CEO of VetX International. I write, I speak, I run veterinary practices, and mostly I talk about leadership, and I think about leadership from maybe not in the more traditional sense. And actually, I think the traditional sense is nobody really knows what leadership actually means or how to do it. So it's really the first point of contact with a business, and it's an operating system for how to get your vision into reality, and that the transmission medium for that are the people that are within your practice. So the culture, the recruitment, the organization of those people is really where I spend all of my time professionally now, helping businesses and also in my own business, sort of playing with concepts and this never-ending quest to find a way of making veterinary medicine sustainable for all. But it's really, it all boils down to, you know, we try at VetX to help humans get along so workplaces thrive. That's our mission.
So workplaces and people thrive, obviously.
Yeah, like just that's the workplace is nothing without the people, so it's woven right in there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's both sides of the exam table, isn't it? It's the professional and the client, equally important.
Well, listen, veterinary practices have traditionally been a great place for animals, you know, notwithstanding the fact that they're sick often, but we've done a really good job of looking after animals. And I think for many, many years, we've traded on the simple fact that there is an in-baked purpose in almost all veterinary professionals. There's a vocation, like we're going to do our job even in cultures that suck, because we're still getting to do that thing we're on the planet to do. And I think we may have reached the end of the road with that, where culture now matters so much.
Right, well, thank you for that. I'm gonna hand over to Eric now to introduce himself to our viewers. Eric,
Yes.
go ahead.
All right. So I work exclusively with veterinary practices all around the world, helping them create digital strategies to better engage and communicate with pet owners. As we know, the advent of technology has been around for quite some time, but it's just now the point where veterinary practices are really struggling for ways to better utilize it, not only as a way to attract new clients, but also as a way to retain existing clients. A big part of my focus for quite some time now has really been focused around helping veterinary practices differentiate themselves. I think it's great that the profession now is using technology, and they're using tools like social media and websites to better engage pet owners and to attract them to their practices. But unfortunately, you know, just like job adverts, they're all saying the same thing in the same way. And so, unfortunately, you know, we live in this world where practices are heavily competing with other practices in the area of all different kinds. And so it's important for practices to want to thrive, to truly harness the power of what marketing can do for your practice. It's really starting to now focus on the shift of how we're saying things to truly communicate who we are at the heart of that practice, instead of saying that typical same old. And so, you know, that's something I have a lot of joy in working with and lecturing on. And again, you know, I'm just happy to see that practices now are doing something, but now it's just time to challenge these practices to take them to the next level.
Yes, and to do something new. Well, look, I'm awfully proud of the fact that I've got both of you on this very first GuavaVet Find Remarkable vlog. Both of you are remarkable, so I found remarkable right here. Both of you are speakers of the year at the NAVC's VMX conference, probably the biggest veterinary meeting in the world, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for being my first guest. Now, GuavaVet, as you know, is for recruitment, specifically for veterinary recruitment. And this is also a change. It's a completely new way of doing things where what my whole idea is to find an easier way to match the to find the best fit, we can put it that way, from the outset. Because if you find the best fit from the outset, it means that you've got a good foundation to build upon. Now, the reason I've asked the two of you to be on this first blog of mine is because, Dave, you've spoken and presented on recruitment before at VMX, and Eric, I believe you also speak on recruitment, but specifically marketing. So let's talk about the way we've advertised jobs. Now, the title, or what I wanted us to talk about, is it's a job ad, not a job description, because it seems that the formula, if you read the classifieds, if you read the job ads, it's more about the practice. It's more about me, the employer, rather than appealing to the person I want to advertise to. We advertising at. So in my opinion, well, I think that the formula, well, if you look at the formula, you analyze it, it is, look, we're a veterinary practice. We need a vet or a vet nurse, vet tech. This is what we'd like for you to do for us. This is what we expect of you. We're going to pay you, but we're not going to say how much. So it's almost as, look, you can work for anyone and we're anyone. So let's talk about what you think, and we'll start with you, Eric. What you think a good job ad looks like?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things that it starts with is imagery. When we think about marketing and we think about what captures people's attention, and we think about the role that imagery plays and just us as humans, that's a big part of it. And so I think the right imagery, having something that's going to capture people's attention. And so for me, what that means is having a picture of the team. And I know we'll talk about culture later, but having a picture of the team working together to truly show who that practice is, show them working as if they get along. Hopefully they do. Okay. And for me, I always tell practices and I want three things in an image. I want the human animal bond, because that's at the core of what you're offering. I want to see compassion. I want to see smiling faces, people that I could see myself getting along with. And then I want to see culture. I want to see that teamwork in there. And what I don't want to see, which is what most veterinary practices tend to do, is one of two things. One is, there is no imagery, or the imagery is normally either just a standard logo, or it's the front of the building. Mm-hmm. And so, that's not really doing anything. That doesn't really say who you are. The exterior of an inanimate object isn't what's going to really stand out for people. But then I also want to, hear about who that practice is at its core. Why do you do what you do? What is your mission? Tell me a little bit about what that practice owner's philosophy are. Tell me about the way that you've gotten to that point. I also want to see client reviews. If you have a great reputation, hopefully you do. This is something that we actually know a lot of vet students will look at. I lecture at a lot of the vet schools, and one of the things that they say they're looking for when they're looking for employment somewhere, because job adverts fail to provide enough information, is looking at their reviews online. What is it that other pet owners are saying about them? Because at the end of the day, no one wants to work for someone that has a horrible reputation in the community, because it's not going to make you happy. And so, those are some of the things that I think that really stand out in making sure that a job advert is written in a way that's different than some of the rest. And there's certainly more that we can talk about as time goes on. But the other last thing I'll quickly say is, we also fail to realize that in many communities, there are shortage of veterinarians, and so meaning that sometimes people will relocate just for better employment. And so one of the neat little things that I've seen on job adverts is pitching where they're going to live. Tell me a little bit about your city and your state and what makes it so great, and what it is that I can do if I move there, whether by myself or whether if I have a family. These are all little things that really start paving the way toward writing something that's, the standard same old.
Dave, now you've presented on this year at VMX, if I remember correctly, on writing a job ad and specifically recruitment. So what does a good job ad look? Well, what does a good job ad look like in your opinion? Now, imagery, and when Eric spoke about imagery, I remember you writing and you created the imagery of the unicorn and the hooves, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the first thing I always think there's two things I think with a job advert, and I think you're right. I've always called them adverts. I think maybe job descriptions is a more a North American term. But you're right. They're not. They're all the same. You read it. I remember once, long while ago, I just started out in a management position and was asked to write my first job ad, and I did it, and I put it in the it was then the Vet Record, and it was funny. I got sort of feedback from people going, "Well, you can't write an advert like that." Because it was different. There was actually very few words in it, and I look back at it now, and I don't think it was a good job ad, but it was different, and it kind of stood out. And of course, but then I was like, oh, I can't write an ad like that. I must write an ad like everybody else's. And I looked at everybody else's, and I thought, this is how we get here. Like you do something different, and people like call you out on it, and then if you don't have the courage, then you go back and you conform, and then it all looks the same. And when there's an oversupply in the market, that doesn't matter. But now there's an undersupply of clinical positions in many countries, and it really does matter. So, but that there is one of the traps for right now, is that people just want to attract somebody, and there's a desperation to have the job ad just attract somebody with a pulse, and I think that's an error, because when you don't do step one, which is to think about what you actually need and build out I build out an avatar of who I'm looking for in really quite immense detail, like maybe about 42 different things we're looking for a single position. And so we have a very clear idea of who that person is, and what they, not what they look like, but we have an idea of the skills, the values, the aptitudes, some of the talents that this person will have, from an experiential point of view, but also from a psychometric point of view as well. So once we've got that, we can write a job ad. And to me, there's two jobs of a job ad. One is to attract the people who look like that avatar. And again, I say look, I don't mean how they look, but they fit that avatar. And the second one is to put off the people that really aren't a good fit for your practice, for your culture. So they've got to turn off the people. Yep. So when somebody reads a job ad and goes, oh, I'm not applying for that job ad, they're talking about unicorns, that's silly. Well, we are a bit silly. And fun is one of our core values in the practice. So if you think that, then you're not going to want to come and you're not going to enjoy working here. Like every job ad I wrote for my practice in Australia had a Doctor Who reference or theme through it, which went through the whole process. And when you came in to the practice, there was geeky sci-fi stuff happening all over the place. So we needed people to sort of be okay with that from day one. So
it's almost as if you identify a persona. Then coming to marketing talk, it's a persona, and that is so. But where do you find them? And I'm going to go back to Eric. I remember in one of your presentations on marketing, I think you spoke about the attention of a goldfish, was it not, or 7 seconds? Yeah. Now, if I look at some of the data, what we see now, it's more or less the same. The time spent on a CV, reading a CV or resume, and the time spent reading a job advert is between 2 and 7 seconds. You make your choice. You swipe right or left. I don't know. But anyway, so what do you how do you, what would that first line be? How do you grab the attention to say, look, as Dave said, we want the right persona, we want the right person. So that needs to be the first line. What's that hook? How do you define a hook? What does a good hook look like?
Yeah. So first off, and because this ties into the hook, and Dave just mentioned this, and I want to just quickly add a point to this, especially when we talk about a hook, is don't be shy to be silly. I think, I hear it all the time, especially when it comes to marketing or job adverts, or even, putting something out online, they're afraid of being goofy, or they're afraid of saying something that is going to make them seem as if they don't take their job serious. And as Dave said, if as you build your avatar and you try to find someone that matches your practice, and you guys are silly and you like to laugh and you like to have fun, then don't be shy to do that. And same thing goes with a job advert as well. It doesn't have to be looking for a veterinarian. And so for me, it's just making sure that we are really getting to the core of who we are, and saying and looking. The first thing that I challenge practices is look at everything that's out there now, right? It's look at all of the job adverts and make sure that you write something that isn't what you're seeing. The other thing that I'll say too is, most veterinarians and veterinary professionals, you didn't go to school and major in English and like to write content, and that's not your thing. And so what the advice that I give practices is find someone who is skilled at writing copy. So their whole objective is writing content to really attract people, to really create a headline that is going to capture people's attention. And they'll do that after they interview you and learn more about who you are. And so a good copywriter or a good marketing expert will be able to help write that. And I think that's different for every practice, Aubrey, and it should be different for every practice. And so there's no one size fits all solution. I think when you find out about a practice as to who they are at their core, that messaging will come out of that. And so for me, it's one of the best investments that you can make in marketing in general, is really working with a marketing company or a person that will spend time to interview you, ask you questions to get to the core of what makes you as an individual, your practice, your philosophy, your ideology unique. And then when they hear those stories and they hear all of that from your employees and from the veterinarians that work in your practice, they'll come out with that snippet of information that really kind of stands out. And that's what I recommend is not trying to necessarily do it yourself, because it's not always easy to do that. And it's also difficult to look and inward to try to discover who it is that you are and what makes you unique. There's always someone on the opposite end that's going to ask you those questions, that's going to trigger those stories, that's going to trigger those things that are deep-seated in you that have become who you are, to extract that out of you.
Well, before we move on, and it's because of what you just said, Eric, and I want to talk about culture, but just maybe a minute or so spent on the following. And this is, Dave, what do you think of video for a job ad? And then Eric after.
So I think that if you can pull it off, then it can be a useful adjunct to it. I think there are so few people in veterinary medicine who are comfortable in front of a camera that doing it badly is not a good idea.
The interesting thing is, I hear what you're saying, but I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I will write about this, and it's in a future vlog. Is look, we perform.
Mm.
We perform veterinary medicine. That's what we do. And if people don't like what they see, they're upset. If we don't, they pay for our performance, and if we don't perform well, they're upset. So why don't we audition our team members rather than, reading a CV? Anyways, that's a story for a different day, but it's interesting. Eric, what do you think about video?
Yeah, as Dave said, I think it's a good, it supplements what it is that you're doing. It shouldn't be your whole, that shouldn't be your advertisement in place. But I think what it does is it adds an entirely different element to what it is that they're going to be reading in black and white. You can say one thing, but it's an entirely different animal to be able to see that. And so anything that you can do, if you feel comfortable in front of a camera, or have the extra, just like Dave said, you don't want to do it bad, but anything that you can do to put yourself in front of a camera to show people, to apply meaning, that's content marketing 101, is what more can we do to prove that everything that we're saying who we are in terms of who we are is actually true, and video and additional pieces of content are supporting documents.
So I feel that if you write it and if you say it, you better do it. If it's there out there, if this is what you promised, you better do it. And now the video brings me on to our next little bit. We've got a few minutes left, and that is culture. Now, wherever you hear or listen to people talking about job ads and HR, it's all about culture. Now, I think, the way I define culture, just for me, is to say, well, people like us do things like this. Now, how would you, in a job ad, sort of portray your culture? Dave, we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So the culture for me, I like your definition of culture. Culture for me is it's the sum of all of the thoughts, feelings, beliefs that get expressed in our behaviors that all mix together. It's the things we say, how we are with each other, and it's the consistency of that bubbles up and becomes our culture. So capturing that is I think you can capture the essence or allude to it within a job advert. And when we talk about job adverts, I'm referring to the central piece of content that sort of describes the words. Additional pieces of content, and this is where I think video can be very useful as adjunct. So interviews with your staff,
yes,
looking at how things are going. For us in our job ads, we're authenticity is the thing that matters more than anything else. I think in terms of we trade on trust. You say we perform veterinary medicine, but the base currency of every human interaction is trust. And trust, there are some wonderful TED Talks about trust, and one of the best I've seen, and I forget the name of the lady, Harvard professor, but breaks it down into 3 elements: authenticity, the rigor of your logic, and empathy towards the other person you're dealing with. So the authenticity in a human interaction, if you can capture that within your employer brand, and I think that's kind of where you get to when you think, okay, there's a job advert, but there's a whole bunch of content to tell your story, to capture the narrative of your practice in an authentic way. Most job adverts are not authentic at all. They're bullshit. People are they're as much bullshit as a CV is.
Absolutely.
Like, job seekers are sending in CVs that are full of rubbish. They're not rubbish, but they're hardly the truth.
Well, that's what makes them a superstar, and that may or may not be true.
Correct, right? It's like the Incredibles cut out. Like, Mr. Incredible. Actually, I'm like Pee Wee Herman or something like that. And then you've got, on the other hand, you've got the practices that in this job ad are saying, well, we're some kind of, polished, perfect, functional unit and that's also BS. The truth is we're human. We make good decisions, we make bad decisions. That bit is human. It's how we deal with that, how we treat each other, that matters much more. So in job adverts, I recall writing a job advert for one guy, and he could not hire anybody for love nor money, and because he was a grumpy old curmudgeon. Right? He did not play brilliantly with others, but he had this thick outer skin. He was like a leatherback turtle or something on the outside, but he had this soft underbelly, and he really did. He did care, but you just had to be able to live with that. And so he came along and he said, I can't hire anybody. And so we wrote him a job ad, and we did exactly as Eric just described. We interviewed him, we got to know him, and it became obvious he was this grumpy old curmudgeon. So of course we wrote in the advert, I'm a bit of a grumpy old curmudgeon with a thick skin, but genuinely I care if you can get past that bit. So we put that in the job ad. Now he was climbing the walls, and we said, hey, do you want somebody or not? And we said, we can get you somebody, but you need somebody who's going to stay with you. And we published the job ad, and he was like, God, Jesus, what's going to happen here? And so we got our grumpy old curmudgeon, another kind of somebody that could deal with that. They weren't a grumpy old curmudgeon, but they were somebody who could deal with somebody like that. And they'll, I don't know if they lived happily ever after, but they didn't leave within 3 months like everybody else had.
Yeah.
And so it's just we have to be vulnerable because that's what's going to show up in day one. So I think if we can capture elements of, listen, our values say we care. So when you can express that and say, look, we try our hardest to get it right, but we don't always. And when we screw up, we're going to try and put it right because that's who we are. Like, you give a little glimpse of your culture.
So yeah, and that's finding that right fit from the outset, because
Yeah.
yes, we don't know. Look, one of the advice that I now give is to practices, the idea of keeping somebody forever, that's gone. You
Yeah.
need to be a good practice to be from. That should be part of your culture. Eric, so let's you know a lot about culture. I mean, you're in marketing.
Yeah, so a few things when it comes to culture, and then I think a really important component that goes with culture and the whole job advert period. First off, when it comes to culture, I think just talking about your team, and talking about and attributing your success to your team, and not being shy to do that. There's a practice that I worked with out of Arizona here in the States, and they wrote a job advert. There were tons of pictures of the team members, the doctors, some silly, some working hard, and you can really see them working together. And one of the things that they put on their job advertisement was, we're committed to the development and the success of our team. We wouldn't be who we are without them. And so they said, things along those lines throughout it, but then again, they showed it. And then they did have testimonials from other associate veterinarians saying, I've been working here for 5 years and here's why I enjoy it. Even newer employees were on there that have been there for, just over a year. And it was all in written form. And it was pictures of that employee, either with their pet, or them working in the practice. So getting those form of employee reviews are important. And the other thing is that it's important that if we're going to spend this time communicating the culture of the practice that the person is going to ultimately, eventually, potentially be working for, that we have to do what we can to make sure that we live up to that expectation. Because this is a rule in marketing that unfortunately I've seen broken so many times.
Mm-hmm.
It's the broken brand promise, right? When you have been advertising this culture, this great practice, this successful growing practice, and then they work there, and then day one, and this is not my expertise, this is Dave and others, but there's no system in place to onboard that person. There's nothing to show what that culture is like, to feel as if you're, everyone's coming together to really help you and onboard you and work with you. And in the world that we live in today, when you fail to live up to something that you're so adamant that you are who you are, a majority of the time, we're human, we're going to mess up, things will happen, absolutely. And that's, important to know. But when it happens a majority of the time that you're not who you say who you are, especially in the recruitment stage now, we now have sites where employees can review the employer. So we have Glassdoor and several websites now where and I've seen it with veterinary practices that have, marketed the Cadillac and are the, insert a lesser value car here.
I can say Chevy.
There you go. I didn't want, well, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't know what people drive. And so it's and that, that can actually counteract you. And that in itself is a whole conversation for a whole nother day. But that's what I would recommend when it comes to cultures, and recruit together as a team. Have a team meeting, let people know we're going to be recruiting for this position, and work together to come up with that language and what it is that you feel is going to really stand out to get people to engage in that ad.
So authenticity is important. If you promise something, you need to deliver. You need to be fresh. It needs to be new. And just from my part, there's two types of job seekers out there. Either those who are looking for their first job, or those who are looking for a new job. And that's how you need to advertise. Listen, guys, this was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we could talk for another hour, but I know your time is precious and you've got other things to do. So I want to firstly thank you so much. And if you don't mind, Dave, why don't we start with you? Tell us where people can hear you, see you next, read. I'm sure my viewers would like to see more and hear more and read more.
So Seymour is like, I'd love to be saying I was going to a conference soon, but with COVID, that's not looking likely anytime in the near future. Best places, so vetexinternational.com. We publish about five new pieces of content in a week around the topic of leadership or of careers and having successful careers within veterinary medicine. So that's vetexinternational.com, or if people want to pick up a copy of my book for the younger vets, the recent graduates out there, or the students.
Great book.
Thank you kindly, sir. So You're a Vet Now What? Available, actually just coming out as an audiobook next month as well. So that's available on ebook on Amazon or in print through drdavenicol.com.
Dave, thank you very much. Eric.
Before I pimp my stuff, is the ebook, is it going to be in your voice?
The audiobook is in my voice, and then there's like podcast interview segments between the chapters that are completely new as well. So I
think it's going to be fantastic.
We're gonna we had fun.
I'm not a veterinarian, but I'm gonna just anyway. So
you're just gonna listen to the voice, Eric.
That's right, and now I'm just gonna fall asleep every night.
Yeah.
Dr.
I use Jeremy Irons for that as well, but okay, there we go.
That's a.
I'm not sure if that was a compliment or if that was
absolute
either
compliment.
Of you. I'm taking the Jeremy Irons compliment all day long.
Absolute compliment.
Asleep bit.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah.
Time for bedtime, Eric.
I mean, it says Mike. You can follow me anywhere online at Eric Garcia FL. I do have a conference that is coming up. Noodle U.
Yes, Noodle.
That's right. Dave will be there. And that is November 7th through 8th. That is for veterinarians. That is our medicine weekend. Phenomenal medicine speakers will be there, just talking about the latest advancements in feline medicine, surgery, oncology, and end-of-life care. And then December 12th through the 13th is our practice management weekend, where we're just talking about the latest and greatest. And what I like about the management weekend being the first week of December to the end of the year is that it's a great time to really start to think ahead for 2020 and to really kind of end the year really gathering your thoughts and your plans. And that way you can hit 2021, hopefully on a much better note than we ended up with in 2020.
Look, I'm sure it's going to get better, and I do hope that I see the both of you at VMX in January. Fingers crossed. Guys, thank you very much. Great seeing you, great talking to you, and see you soon.
Thanks, Aubrey.